overwhelmed by the project. You've got so much material. You know, you've got thousands of pages of trial transcript. You've got thousands of pages of police records. Take it one step at a time. Don't look at it as a book. Look at it as a chapter. Okay, today I'm going to write about they go missing, and the family, the first 2 or 3 days when the family's wondering what the heck happened. And then the next chapter, you do it in chunks. Don't think of the end. Don't think of how long this is going to be, or you never get started. And you knock off a couple of chapters a day, and the next thing you know, you're almost done. This was not a difficult book to do. There was so much good material. Bronco was a character, Donna was a character, the Duvalls were characters. The fact that, you know, they were supposed to end up in the western side of the state, and at the last minute took a right turn and went up I-75, decided they wanted to party with just the two of them instead of going to the family deer cabin. So you had all this investigation going on one side of the state, and all these leads and all these newspaper stories. So there was so much material. It was not difficult to say, man, this is going to be a pretty good book if I don't really screw this up.
Is there any piece of information or any perspective that, you know, looking back now that the book is already published, that you wish you would have included?
The only part, and this was interesting, there was a defense attorney for the Duvalls, and the court testimony was so funny, and he was fighting a completely losing battle. He was, you know, but he was a court-appointed attorney, and I didn't reach out to him. I mean, I had what he said in court, and I had what his clients said for the record. He made some arguments that were really pretty silly, but he had no choice. I mean, he had to say something. So he was coming up with weird conspiracy things, and throwing stuff on the wall to see if anything stuck. Nothing stuck. Well, I kind of made him as a comic relief in the book. I kind of cherry picked the stupid stuff he said because I needed, I could use some yucks in the middle of this crazy case. Well, a year and a half later, the Berkeley Library is having a Friends of the Berkeley Library night, and what's on the agenda is meet true crime reporter Tom Henderson, and he'll talk about his book, and they pay me $100, and I don't go and do it for the $100. You do it to help promote the book, and they actually had a big room full of people came out, and the librarian beforehand came up and she says, "I just want to warn you that the Duvall's attorney's here, and he's not real thrilled." And I'm like, oh no. So before my little presentation began, I said, "I think there's somebody in the room I need to apologize to." I said, "Can I see the attorney for the Duvalls? Can you stand up?" I said, "I owe you an apology. Absolutely, I was unfair to you. I cut corners. I should have made a phone call. I should have come out and met with you. I took a cheap shot with you." And he was like, "Well, I appreciate that." He says, I had a losing hand. I understand that, but I would have liked to have talked to you. I would have liked to have met you. So I said, I apologize. It's a lesson learned. Well, the funny thing is, the small world thing is, the next book I did, Afraid of the Dark, a prominent, he had been in a sportscaster and then was in the mortgage industry, prominent local guy, was convicted of murdering his wife at a resort in the western side of the state. Happened to be one of this defense attorney's best friends. So the attorney became one of my sources on my next book, giving me all kinds of behind the scenes stuff on the family and all the gossip and all the innuendo, all the stuff that I wouldn't have got. So he ends up becoming a friend and a source, and here's the guy that I really didn't treat fairly, previously. So I guess it pays off to just give heartfelt apologies when they're due.
Most definitely. Bringing it back to Bronco, what are some things that you believe that he did that ultimately was the main reason why the case got solved? Like, what are some attributes or something that a police officer needs to have such as Bronco, that really helped nail that case?
Well, Bronco he was just remarkable. He wanted every case to be treated as if it was his own family member involved. Everybody deserved the best attention a cop could give it. And that's easier said than done, especially when you inherit a 15-year-old case that people have been investigating and no one's had any success with. You know, a lot of people took their run at this, and nobody came close to solving it. But he wasn't going to let that rest, you know, and he went out on it, like I say, on his own time, after work, before work, you know, knocking on doors on a winter day when the sun isn't up yet. And then when he did finally meet somebody who looked like maybe they could help crack the case, he spent 2 years or more breaking down her defenses. Just a remarkable character. And one thing about Bronco, too, is he treated criminals with respect. He made it a point of pride to never treat anyone impolitely. I mean, and he expressed that to me. Yes, you've committed a crime and you're getting arrested. I think you've committed a crime. I'm going to arrest you. But I'm going to treat you politely because you pay my taxes. You're a citizen. Everybody was yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir. Can you please duck your head? Yeah. And I'd had other people confirm that to me, that, you know, here was this guy that just thought everybody deserved respect. The Duvalls, who had been feared in that area for many years, and other police were afraid of them. If they were involved in an incident of some kind, no cop ever went to their door or the bar they were at or whatever the scene of the altercation was alone. They always got backup. They went in twos or more anytime they had interaction with the Duvalls. Bronco used to make a habit of just stopping by, just pull up in the Duvalls, honk the horn, hey, how you guys doing? Let them know, hey, I haven't forgot about you. You guys are my suspects. And they had been suspects for a long time before he ran into Barb Boudreaux. It was, I'm going to let them know that this is one cop who's not afraid of you guys. It also helped that he was a weightlifter and a big guy and a triathlete. You know, he's a really focused individual. And, but a remarkable cop. I mean, you know, you can't expect, he went way beyond the call of duty, and that's just the kind of guy he is.
I know at one point in your book you mentioned that Barb Boudreaux had an affair with a police officer by the last name Smith, and that he actually was there that night that the Bronco got out of the ditch, and he thought it was like a drunk driver. He didn't really want to deal with it, and so he went about and did his own thing. Do you feel like that's what really separates police officers, those who don't let things just slide, and then there's Bronco that actually goes for it despite the fact if it's a suspect or if it's a witness that doesn't want to speak to him? Yeah,
well, in every profession you're going to get people that just do the minimum, do the basics, let things slide. If you're on the way to have an encounter with some woman you're having an affair with and work tries to rear its ugly head, you're going to ignore work. Bronco would never do any of that. You know, he was just a cop to the nth degree. You know, if half the cops in America were like Bronco, nobody would ever be dissing cops. But he's an exception to the rule. I mean, he's just really a remarkable guy. And when Mike Larson said this is the best cop in the history of the state police, that sounds like an exaggeration. I certainly don't know every cop in the history of state police. I can't say that's a true statement, but I don't doubt it.
And for Donna, what do you believe was her, I guess, benefits of who she was to be able to really solve this case that had no body, no evidence, limited witnesses? What were the attributes that she brought to the case?
She was assigned to the case. She has a great track record. Bronco was very upset when she was assigned to the case. There was another prosecutor on it that he'd established a rapport with. He kind of thought this was like Lansing political correctness, that they wanted to bring on a woman prosecutor, that she was the rising star. They wanted to help embellish her, you know. So he, at the first, and he apologized later for it, he thought this was not a good move to bring in this new prosecutor sort of at the last minute. You know, things had been rolling along, and she she was getting ready to go on a honeymoon and took the case with her, came back a couple days before trial. Bronco thought this is going to be a disaster, and it turned out that she had this capacity to take in a lot of information, organize it in her mind, figure out what are the legal arguments, where are the legal dead ends. And he said he had never sat first, I think they called it first bench, but sitting at the prosecutor table as the lead detective on a case. He had never sat first bench or first chair with anyone nearly as organized and talented as she is. And she's a true believer as well. You know, some people do this just because it's a job and, you know, it pays better than being, you know, the average defense attorney hanging out a shingle. She's the equivalent of Bronco on the prosecutorial side.
Okay. Now, as we wrap up, is there anyone else that you feel would benefit from, that I would benefit from talking to about this? Besides, of course, Donna and Bronco, do you think there's anyone else? Those
are the keys. Barb's dead. David Till's mom was fantastic. She's dead. Brian Ogden's mom died. There's one of David's siblings is a Facebook friend of mine. Well, she follows me on Facebook, or, you know, I see things once in a while, but I wouldn't, you know, I don't really know her very well. I don't know what she would have to add to the thing. The key really is Bronco and Donna.
Okay. And is there anything else you'd like to add about the case or anything?
I think that, let me just glance at my little cheat sheet. I wanted to get in Mike Larson talking about Bronco, and I wanted to talk about the hard scrabble area that is in northern Michigan. People tend to think of northern Michigan as this really beautiful, and it's beautiful. But it's little small towns of ugly houses and junk in the yards and 8th grade dropouts and a lot of desperation and little hope. It's probably a good reason why people are poaching salmon and deer so their families don't starve.
And chainsawing cows.
Well, that was the one thing. There's a couple of folks in Hollywood have taken a run at trying to get a movie made out of this book. It hasn't happened yet. There was one independent film director. He'd done some documentaries and was well regarded, but it's a lot easier to try to make a movie than to actually make one. He had gotten a license for the rights and spent a couple of years trying to get it made. We just did another licensing deal. Somebody who's actually done some movies and was one of their partners actually helped finance La La Land. So we'll see what happens. But there's so many cinematic scenes in that book that would lend themselves to the movie, and probably the most cinematic is the Duvalls having their annual barbecue with their ne'er-do-wells and biker buddies, and this big crowd of bearded guys getting drunk and smoking weed and snorting coke, and the Duvalls start worrying about if they're going to run out of meat. So what would anybody do if they were going to run out of meat? They get the chainsaw and they get the pickup truck and they drive down the road a mile and they get out and they hop the fence at the farmer's field and they go up and shoot a cow in the head, and then they chainsaw it into pieces standing right there. And I don't know if you've ever chainsawed anything, but you chainsaw a log and your whole body is filled with sawdust in like 30 seconds. I can't imagine what it's like to chainsaw blood and guts and tendons and ligaments and viscera. I mean, they all must have just been covered in blood and gore. And they drag the body parts back to the truck and they race back to their house and they throw it all on the fire and keep the party going.
And I think that scene definitely paints just who they are, just kind of emotionless, being able to kill something without, any hesitation.
Their neighbors, and it's their neighbor's possession. This is somebody who has the property next door. It's their cow. They probably want their cow. But they just felt entitled. Hey, we need a cow. We need it now. You don't want to take a donation. Go around and pass the kitty and then drive to the grocery store and buy like 6 more slabs of baby backs. When you can just kill a cow.
Do you think that was just solely the Duvall's way of life, or do you think just up in that area that was?
Well, you know, you don't want to paint a whole area, but there was definitely a ne'er-do-well element there. I mean, they hung out in certain circles, and there's places in the book where people go missing, there's mysterious deaths or suspicious deaths, and not a place for the faint of heart.
Definitely. And did you want to speak on Mike Larson and Bronco and your opinion on that?
Well, I think I've said that, you know.
Okay.
Mike was a great help as well. Did the same thing. Got access to police reports and trial transcripts, and a very scary book. If you want to read, if you like this stuff for your own edification, Blood Justice is the name of it. This was a very sick puppy.
I will definitely check that out. And do you mind telling us where we can find you? Any upcoming projects? What you're currently doing?
Yep, I am. Recently retired a couple of months ago from Crane's Detroit Business, where I'd been a business reporter for 11 years. Not retiring very well. I'm doing a lot of project work and will be for Crane's. I've kept a couple of beats, venture capital and private equity beat. So I'm going to continue to be active. I will be working mostly out of a place in northern Michigan, an old one-room schoolhouse that we've rehabbed. I'm used to do a lot of work at the running publications and with Michigan Runner magazine. I don't do that anymore, but I'm fighting the baby boomer fight against getting old. Not very successfully, but fighting it anyway. So I'm off running every day with my dog and mountain biking and kayaking and cross country skiing. And you know, I'll probably ski down a hill into a tree and crack my head open and die in the woods. It won't be a mystery. It'll just be bad luck.
And have you always been a nature person, being out with the elements?
No. You know, I grew up in Detroit. You know, Detroiter, big city guy. You know, but have learned to appreciate the woods, and I have the best of both worlds now. You know, I'm down in east side of Detroit, city living, and up in the wood. You know, I mean, it's not. I'm in a wonderful neighborhood, East English Village, but in the summer, we're not very far away from some pretty desolate areas of you know, just urban chaos. A lot of the houses have fallen into the ground, and people drop their tires off, and drug dealing, and you know, really ugly stretches of the city. And it's not unusual at all in the summer at 2 in the morning to wake up in the middle of the night and hear like two guys with Glocks, you know, firing their 15 shots each at each other. And you don't know if it's a drug deal gone bad or they're just drunk and shooting trees, or, you know, but you hear, you know, it's not unusual at all to be woken by the sound of gunfire. And the next week, I'm worried about the bear in the yard up north, you know, so it's yin and yang. Yeah, yin and yang.
Okay, and where can they find more books like Darker Than Night? I know you mentioned Blood Justice.
I've got 5 books. They're St. Martin's Press. They're all in print. You can find them at Amazon.com. The big bookstores have them, Barnes & Noble. They typically don't have all 5. They'll have 1 or 2, and if you want to order one, the easiest way to do it is just Barnes & Noble. And some of them are now available in e-versions. You know, not all of them yet, but.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Tom, for coming on and being interviewed.